very excited today to be here with some wonderful colleagues. Martha Doris introduced me to Mariela just a couple years ago, and I've had the opportunity to work with her and get to know her a little bit. Very excited to have the opportunity to interview you today. Know that you are passionate about this topic of redefining employee engagement. Employee engagement is something you are passionate about, and how we will need to redefine this going forward. We appreciate your public service and know that you just want to highlight, you just retired not too long ago after 30 years serving the public at the Citizenship and Immigration Services, where you finished as the Chief of the Office of Citizenship and Applicant Information Services. So thank you for your service and your continued involvement in the community. We really
thank you. Thank you so much. And I'll add 2 more years, 32. There's something to be said about those 2 years. So do allow me to just throw them out there. And thank you. And thank you, Martha, not only for the introduction and for the opportunity to work with John, but for your so many years of service. I think you exceed the 32. I think you were closer to maybe 34.
Oh, well, yeah.
And the most important thing here is that we continue to care. We continue to sort of kind of try to move that needle forward. And so it's a privilege and an honor to be with you guys today.
Thanks, Mariela. I know, we did work together when we were both in the government, and now we have continued to work together around customer experience, making the employee engagement piece of it so critical to that customer experience. I echo John in thanking you for your service and your continued support of the public service and what we can do from the outside to help move the needle. So thank you.
Mariela, what should we know about you? What should our audience know about you that we haven't mentioned?
Well, I think that, and this will come across, so I might as well just put it out there. I'm very passionate. I am not a passive passenger on this journey. I have invested a significant amount of time and effort around that idea that customers, constituents deserve. Not, they expect, obviously, but they deserve the very best quality of service that the government can and should provide. And that the other side of that experience is that if we don't invest, and the investment is not an investment of time, of money and technology and time, but if we don't invest in inspiring and developing the very best workforce that can then deliver that very best service, then we are wasting our time. And I have seen, and I think that you have seen, and Martha has definitely seen in 3 decades of service, that we go through sort of kind of motions of investing in technology, investing in the delivery of services. But if we don't first, and I think it's a first, and particularly right now, because the government workforce has been immensely resilient this year, but there is a little bit of post-traumatic stress disorder going on. So I definitely think that we need to take a deep breath and invest on that workforce as a first step in 2021, if there is indeed that appreciation for how important their well-being is in that delivery, ultimate delivery of services to our constituents.
So Mariela, I mean, I agree with you, but people are our greatest asset in terms of the government and really in any organization. What are some of your insights in how to redefine employee engagement going forward in this new normal, or however you want to refer to, the future that we're gonna have at some point?
Martha, we don't disconnect. Even though we retire, we move on, we do something a little different with our lives, we don't disconnect with what defined us professionally and personally for so many years, and we don't disconnect with not everyone, obviously, but with some of the people that were so important in our careers. And so I continue to converse with some of my colleagues. Sometimes, they seek some feedback, and sometimes I need the connection. And so one of the things that I have been giving a significant amount of thought to lately is that we don't really need to change the basic and fundamental pillars of what engaging with employees is all about. We don't have to change them. We just need to adjust and adapt them to the new reality. For example, one of the most important things that I think a leader can bring to this time of engaging with employees is empathy. Empathy is something, we have been empathetic leaders, but focusing on what is happening in your immediate work environment, which happens to be also your home environment, and be empathetic to the fact that you can't tell an employee today, you need to leave those issues at home. You need to leave those personal issues at home. Well, guess what? They're working from home. Those issues are home. And the issues that we're talking about, and the reason why I'm stressing empathy is because we're talking about not just children that are displaced from schools and are working from home and are creating, and are creating challenges for parents that are working from home. I am talking about things that go beyond that. I am talking about individuals that are caring for elderly members of the family. I'm talking about individuals that are working from home and are also caring for children that need additional time and attention because of their vulnerability. I'm talking about very serious things that could happen in any household, including unemployment, including financial crisis, including mental issues, mental illness. I mean, there's a whirl of issues that are happening all around us, and so I definitely think that empathy is something that needs to be applied to this new environment in a way that is not intrusive, but in a way that brings out any potential issues that could be impacting your ability to perform as an employee, and that I, as a manager, can address with you.
I was just going to say, I've even heard in situations where you have 3 or 4 or 5 people either, distance learning at home or working and on Zoom calls, and they don't even have enough bandwidth in their house for everybody to actually work at the same time. So you're constantly like, I'm going off video because I don't have enough bandwidth in the house. And so, I couldn't agree with you more that all of those issues that you need to pay attention to, and you mentioned many of them. So I agree. Being empathetic as a leader is critical.
And also, being not only empathetic, but also being incredibly, leaders today need to manage flexibility. And I think that is going to be another area of significant discussion this year, is going to be, how do you manage? We went from, in many ways, managing fairly predictable work environments from the perspective of productivity, from the perspective of expectations, from the perspective of proximity. Productivity, proximity came together. And now we are going to be managing honestly, we're managing the unknown. We're managing flexibility, and that's not tangible. But that is exactly what is going to be required, particularly when you don't have the proximity.
It's also, at least in my experience in the government, it's not something that is innate, as a leader in the government, when you're used to managing by seeing people in the organization. And we've made some progress in terms of teleworking a day or 2 a week, but when your team is totally remote, setting up an environment where you are flexible yet you can still continue to meet your mission, I don't think it's easy. And I think we're going to be learning from each other along the way.
But Martha, Jen and I were talking the other day about the fact that not long ago, a year ago, possibly, let's say a year ago, working remotely and the ability to work remotely more than a couple of days a week was more of a reward for, for sort of kind of being at the top of the game, for demonstrating your ability to be able to supervise your work and to produce and be, and so it was a privilege to be able to work remotely. And all of a sudden, we, for example, when I was managing the contact centers, we were bringing individuals in for 90 to 120 days. And we were nesting and training and nurturing and supervising and, hand-holding for 90, 120 days. And then after that, we were then able to let them fly and go home and work remotely. Well, what happens to organizations across government and even in the private sector that all of a sudden had to there's no hand-holding, there's no nesting, there's no, from hiring to not necessarily retiring, but from hiring to the next level of the journey, everything is going to be remotely. You have heard me talk a little bit about how recruitment in the federal space has to adapt and adopt to the new reality. I have been an advocate in my own little world. See, I advocate in my own little world. I don't need to advocate anywhere else, but I'm advocating for a deeper understanding of what gamification and the behavior associated with games can and should do, and the platforms that we need to bring into the federal recruitment space to be able to give this new generation, because as you know, better than anyone, in 2025, 75% of the government employees are going to be millennials. We are going to be the minority in the workspace, and I'm very happy that is happening. It's called generational change. And we're lucky enough to be here to witness that. But the reality is that one of the things that I have discussed with my own children, which are millennials, and they're my case study is actually my daughter, and I think your case study can be your daughter as well. And one of the things that she appreciates is the ability to self-select everything from the from the organization that she wants to work with to what exactly does her skills fit into that organization. Gamification will give that young professional the opportunity to basically select and say, this is for me. I understand how I could potentially fit into. I see myself growing in this organization. And so we have a lot to learn. It's been out there for 10 years. This is not the flavor of the month. It's something that has proven to be extremely effective. And I think that, that should be one of the trends that the federal government should pursue this year when it comes to recruiting individuals.
Well, and when you think about, the integration of people, process, and technology, right, in this remote work environment, I agree with you. I think that the technology piece, the gamification could impact all of those pieces because new generation is used to working in that way, but also the technology for, calls like we're doing right now. I have heard that in, 2 years, it won't look at all like what we're, experiencing today. And I was like, what would that look like? And then the other day I saw a new product where grandparents can now read a book on the screen and the kids can be over here and the grandparents can be over here, which today they're holding up the book and they're, so there's going to be lots of advances in the technology that's going to drive us, as well as just the necessity to engage and connect with your team.
I think so, Martha, but I also fear that too much too soon could also overwhelm the people in the process. And too much too soon in terms of technology could overwhelm the people in the process. One of the things that I've been reading about is the fact that, yes, 2020 was a catalyst for a lot of innovation that was basically, swim or sink type of innovation. We need to connect, and so we're going to connect. And so, I mean, I Zoom for the first time this past year. I am still a little bit confused between, are we going to Zoom? Are we going on Google is it Google TC? I don't even know. I will be the worst brand ambassador for all of these platforms because I don't even know what they are. But I know that I'm doing it. I know that I am embracing it because I have to, not because I want to. I want to be with you. I want to be exactly where you are right now, but I can't. So I'm going to do it. But some of the platforms that are coming up, and there are, and they're out there right now, but I'm saying coming up because obviously it takes us a little bit longer to adopt some of this new technology in government, but some of them include sentiment analysis. And one thing is to conduct sentiment analysis and predictive analysis on customers, correct? Because, you want to make sure that, the tone reflects the level of satisfaction that they're having at that moment of the interaction. And one thing is to introduce sentiment analysis, at the employee, manager level. And so I think that we need to, as we continue to explore those platforms for engagement, we need to also make sure that we're providing those managers and first line supervisors with the training that they will need, again, to sort of kind of move the needle, but do so in a way that is productive, that is welcome. And I think that the only way that we can balance this is by also making sure that the employees are actively engaged in the design and implementation of all of these different channels of engagement and communication. Checking in is going to have to be a little bit more consistent. And I think that one more very positive, from my perspective, trend that will come out of all of this is going to be the personalization of that engagement between that employee and that manager. There is going to be an expectation that with distance is going to come even a stronger desire to be part of that organization. Isn't distance what makes the heart grow fonder? Well, it works in the workplace as well. People are missing being part of that community. They're telling you that, and they're telling me that, and John, they're screaming at you. They are missing the connection. And how do you provide an environment that is conducive of feeling connected? It's gonna have to be, honestly, it's going to have to require a little bit of one-on-one. It's going to require a little bit of person-to-person. It's going to require some of the things that in the real world of managing, 1,000 or 2,000 employees seems impossible, but it isn't. If you break it into little pieces and little moments of engagement that are meaningful for the employee and for the organization and for that manager, it is eminently doable. And that is going to be an expectation, the expectation of personalization, because otherwise we risk disconnecting. And it's going to be very difficult to disconnect. Another area, go ahead, Martha.
I was just going to say, I think also I want to at least highlight the advantages that we're achieving based on this immersion into, total work from home. I mean, it does allow both employees to move out of the, center of the city in order to have a shorter commute so that they can move out, have more room, have a different kind of lifestyle, as well as it allows employers across the government to reach across the whole country to be able to, access a talent pool that they might not have had access to in the past. So I think as we work these issues out, and we all learn how to work in this environment more efficient and effectively, it's going to be a good benefit to everybody in the long run.
And that is a very, very interesting point and a very important one. The marketplace is a national marketplace. The talent marketplace went from being a local marketplace to being a national marketplace. And that also brings a significant amount of opportunity for some of the, as I said earlier, some of the things that we were doing in the past are still incredibly powerfully important now. It's just that it has to be adjusted. I'll give you 2 examples. Rotations. I think rotations are absolutely critical to the development of anybody. It doesn't really matter at what level of the organization. They could be the senior executive, they could be the the employee that has to be exposed to the different aspects of, a contact center operation. You do phones today, you'll do email tomorrow, you'll be chatting, the week after. And so rotations can be virtual. Rotations are going to have to be virtual. And so now you don't only have the opportunity to compete for rotations that could potentially be in the geography and the jurisdiction where you reside, you can actually compete for rotations that are happening anywhere in your organization. And so that's a huge plus based on what you just said, Martha, not just for the employee, but also for the organization. The same with details, which are a little bit different than rotations, but they're going to be virtual in nature. I'm going to be detailed for 6 months to the new office of, immigrant integration. I don't need to be in Washington, D.C. to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. In my career, I was lucky and blessed to transition from the Department of Justice to the Department of Homeland Security, but I really spent 3 decades plus a couple of years with the same organization. It was a different, it had a different name, it had a different home, but it had the same mission. But I was able to start at the local level working, in a field office. And then I moved to I moved from the valley to the hill. And so I was able to work at a regional office looking now at, from the hill, I was looking at the valley and understanding some of the things that maybe I could not see while I was at the valley. And then I came to Washington, D.C. to basically look at both the hill and the valley and understand that maybe what was happening at the valley was the most important lessons that I learned in my career. Employees today do not necessarily have the luxury, because I think it was a luxury to spend 30-something years of your life, going through the motions of understanding an organization and having that deep understanding of how this evolves through 30 decades of work. They don't have the opportunity, and chances are that they don't have the time to devote to, learning, but they don't have to do what I did 30 years ago. They can have the same opportunity to get even a deeper understanding of how it works, because now they don't need to move from where they are. The opportunities will come to them. You and I had to go after them. The opportunities will now come to you. So how do we train then, and how do we make this employees aware of this brand new world of opportunity that they have in front of them? While at the same time, we still need to keep the trains running. We still have to deliver on the core mission of our organizations. This might not be the model for every single government agency, or for every, or every even private sector organization, because some organizations, like the one that I used to, work with, require an in-person engagement for the determination of eligibility for a benefit, requires an in-person engagement for the collection of biometrics that are absolutely critical in keeping the integrity of the system. And so there are going to be moments of spurs, like I call them, of magical innovation that will address some of the limitations associated with the fact that you and I have to have some level of interaction for me to ascertain that you are eligible to become a citizen of this great country. It cannot be done without that level of interaction. So, not all employees are going to be able to have the same level of flexibility. But how about if there is there is a significant backlog when it comes to the adjudication of benefits in a lot of the government agencies, because this year was a year of tremendous transition. So how about if you don't, even from a management perspective, you can actually redeploy and redeploy, because redeployments of work teams, I think, is going to be another trend for this year that is going to be very exciting. How about if you can redeploy team A from geography A to work on another part of the country that has a significant backlog of cases? Moving work around and moving teams around is going to require a significant amount of discipline when it comes to, organizational management, but it's going to be another wonderful area of opportunity for all of us to take a deeper dive this year. Is going to be that constant movement of work and the constant movement of people that are addressing, the needs of the organization, and how do we build on top of all of that very sort of kind of secure and comfortable and dependable network of engagement opportunities, so that we keep track of how the organization is indeed performing.
Along those lines, are you noticing any best practices that are starting to emerge, especially in this current context? I mean, there's virtual practices that were pre-COVID, but now this environment is so different. Are you seeing any best practices emerging?
I'm confident, John. I'm confident that there are a lot of very good opportunities for us, and particularly in the federal space, to come together and have a conversation about the best practices that are happening. For example, I'm not aware of any government agency that is actively pursuing the recruitment in any way that will depart from the way that we have been doing business, that we were doing business in 2019. I'm just going to use 2019 as a pre-COVID anchor, because that's what it was. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not. That doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have teams that are currently, working on doing things not only differently, but incredibly effectively. And one thing that we're going to have to figure out fairly quickly is, how do we make sure that there should be no barriers, and there should be no obstacles to sharing best practices. We don't have time for you to figure things out, so that I can figure things out, so that Martha can figure things out. We need to make sure that we share, that there is an inventory and a repository of the best practices that are happening in government to recruit, to retain, and to reward. I have heard a lot of very good stories about some of the some of the engagement, like the rotation, the virtual details. Those are things that are happening right now. They're not things that they're not on somebody's wish list. There are organizations in government that are doing it right now. Rewards and recognition. There are a lot of organizations in government that are really thinking completely outside of the box. Intrinsic rewards are very important. Some of the ways, think about some of the rewards that we used to, giving somebody, I don't know, tickets to go to the theater, not that, I'm just picking one activity, or, passes to, King's Dominion. I mean, things that maybe I'm not going to be able to access right now, because honestly, they're not accessible today. But how about focusing on health and wellness, and giving me the opportunity to access, a Living Well platform for a whole year. You pay $69 a year to have access to some amazing health and wellness platforms that can help me deal with everything from the steps that I take to, to the food that I should be contemplating if I want to conserve my energy throughout the day. So, yoga classes. Yes, people are doing, on home health has exploded this year. There is no way you can get, an app. You will not go wrong downloading an app that will help you breathe better and feel better. And so there are, and then you can have other flexibilities that that I have seen, like for example, an extended lunch break. And people say, are you out of your mind? I mean, they're working from home. Why should you extend the lunch break? They can take a lunch break whenever they want to. Extend the lunch. Just you know, instead of half an hour today, John, and yeah, I'm gonna do it. Instead of half an hour today, John, take an hour for lunch. Eat for half an hour, take a walk for half an hour, you know, do whatever you want to do. And by the way, you can have flexibilities throughout the week as well. You know, you don't have to work the 5 days, you know, 8 hours, because one thing for sure is when you work from home, and I know the dedicated men and women that work in the government, when they work from home, they work more than 8 hours a day. You don't let go. You don't let go. I mean, every time you pass in front of your home office, it reminds you of work. You don't let go. And so, you know, there are just a lot of things that are happening, but there's one challenge. I don't know if we are capturing them. I don't know if we're having the opportunity to actually document. We need to start telling the stories. There has to be a lot of storytelling here. And I am not so sure that I can document today where those best practices are and where those areas of opportunities are. So maybe that is a place to start. Is you know, the call for action is basically, if there is an opportunity for us to get together, maybe the academy can play a role here, but if there is an opportunity for us to start networking around recruiting, retaining, and rewarding, and how we need to adjust, and how we need to, you know, what are the plans for 2021 and beyond, by the way, because this is going to be a transition year. This is not going to be the end of that transition. So maybe we can start by simply, you know, going out with a call for action. And, you know, if there are areas, and who's doing what, because there is indeed, like I said, a lot of opportunity out there.
Mariela, I think that's a great idea. And to me, a couple of the points that you brought together that I think fit together is, you know, as leaders need to build flexibility into the way that they manage and lead their teams, also taking into account what they have going on in their personal lives, as well as the health and fitness piece and other things that need to happen, so that, you know, managing for results versus the number of things that you do has never been as easy in the government as it is in the private sector, I don't think. And so all of us learning how to do that, I think, would be a great benefit. I'm going to throw a little bit of a off script issue in here, but I don't think we can have this conversation at this time without it. And that is, you know, you've been through a lot of administration transitions, and I just wanted to get some insights from you on, as, you know, a leader in the government who your employees look up to, you know, do you have any recommendations for, you know, managers, leaders in the government as they take on, you know, an incoming administration and an outgoing administration?
Well, this
any
one,
thoughts?
you know, I will say, Martha, that this is going to be a different transition, because it's going to be because of everything that we have been talking about. You know, there are going to be aspects of the transition that are going to be mechanical in nature. You know, and new political leadership comes in as the old political leadership, departs. You will have your big books and your little books and your, you know, accomplishments and your areas of opportunity, and you'll have your leadership meetings. I mean, some of the things are going to happen exactly the same way that they have been happening for the 4 or 5 transitions that maybe you and I had the opportunity and the privilege of being part of. Because I tell you what, it is a privilege to witness how the government really works. And I know that that is a statement that maybe it is a little difficult for for some today, but it is amazingly smooth once it actually happens. And what we need to do as leaders what we need to do, period, is simply be incredibly open and receptive to that new team that is coming on board. Because regardless of your own personal political affiliations, and almost everyone has personal political affiliations, regardless of those personal political affiliations, every team that I've had the privilege to work with brings new ideas. They do bring new ideas. They do bring new energy. And so I think that being welcoming of change, and that I know that it sounds like an old record, but welcoming change and embracing the reality that you're going to be part of something that is going to be different, I think is the most incredibly important thing that we can do. I honestly think that working from home will help this transition and this transition team, because people have more space. And space is both, and I'm referring to space both from a symbolic and a literal nature. Symbolically, you have a little bit more space. So if there's something that sort of kind of doesn't necessarily appeal to you, if there are policy conversations and discussions about changing programs and procedures that don't appeal to you, you have a better opportunity of faking it, particularly faking your facial, oh my God, you have a little bit more space. So I think that you need to take, the universal you needs to take advantage of space. If there is anything that creates a little bit of tension, because there will be tension. Talking about welcoming change, I'm talking about embracing the opportunity to work with a different team and to learn from that team. You can learn what you don't want to do. You can also learn new things and new ways of approaching the same issues. And it could be that if you're open enough and you're receptive enough, it could actually, mean that you will grow as the team grows. You have 4 years here to work. And I think that is something that gives government a significant amount of continuity. The next 100 to 120 days after January 20th, so the spring will lead to summer. And it is during the summer that we usually, during the transition and a change in administration, it is in the summer that we start feeling comfortable with our new reality. But it's a reality that we're going to have for 4 years. And so, by the fall, we're all in, and by winter, we're starting to perform. The first 100 or 120 days are difficult, and we all know that. And that's where leadership needs to come in, and that's where there has to be a sense of dependability. And there has to be a sense of open communication, open discussion. If there is going to be a need to even recognize those issues that we talked about earlier, that work environment at home comes in with all of the issues that are at home. It's the same air system. It's the same airflow. You cannot stop that from happening. So it's going to be even more important, Martha, to finish the discussion about transition, that during the first 100 to 120 days, we paid very close attention to each other and we held each other. That's going to be absolutely necessary to get over the winter months.
Well, speaking of the future, we like to ask our guests a question about the future. If you could pull out your crystal ball, what few ideas, predictions would you offer, just to put something out there that we can look back on, a few years from now? What predictions do you think would you make when it comes to the near-term future, as you've spoken to, but even beyond that?
Well, I think we talked about a lot of them. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just sort of kind of bring 3 or 4 of them to the forefront of the discussion. I'd like to start with the marketplace and how and how, from a recruitment perspective and from an opportunity perspective, the government will become a national marketplace for talent. And I think that's going to be incredibly attractive to a generation that has been a little bit resistant when it comes to making a commitment to public service and to serve. So I think we're going to have to start looking at the metrics of are we attracting the, not necessarily the right talent, because everybody is the right talent, but are we attracting a certain generation that ultimately is feeling a little bit more motivated because they're seeing government as that talent marketplace. The focus from a management perspective, we talked about managing flexibility. And I also want to add there managing outcomes and leading teams to deliver outcomes. I also would like to think that we're going to see a lot more collaboration and cooperation when it comes to the real definition of what teams are all about. We've used teams throughout the years. But I honestly think that this year is going to be one that is going to further define what it means to work as a team and what are going to be the outcomes. Performance, we didn't get the opportunity to talk about performance and measuring performance. Performance is, should be, we should see this year that the trend should be on achieving the collective goals of the team and the organization versus the individual goals of a particular team. And I do hope that performance work plans start revealing and demonstrating that new reality that if we really want to be successful, we need to think about the collectivity of thought that will lead an organization to deliver. And finally, we talked a little bit about some of the new technologies. I think that this is going to be the year for government to truly embrace AI and its myriad of potential applications in government. But artificial intelligence, I think it's here to stay. We talked about predictive analysis. That is going to be very important. With artificial intelligence, I don't want to leave out machine learning because I think that that's going to be very important. So I'll say AI, machine learning, and predictive analysis are going to be trending very heavily this year. I feel like I'm giving a horoscope instead of trending heavily this year. The stars are going to align, and ultimately, what's going to happen this year? We're going to make it. We're going to make it work. We're going to deliver the mission. If we did it this past year, under the circumstances that we had to work and adapt and adopt and put tents in the middle of backyards so that we can connect via Zoom, we're going to do it. We're going to deliver, and we're going to deliver even better results this year because now we know what to expect. We're very resilient in government, which also helps us during times of change and transition.
Awesome. What a great finish. Thanks, Mariela.
Oh, my pleasure.
It'll be a fascinating year, just this year, leave alone to come and to be able to look back and think, okay, so what were we thinking and how did things actually pan out? So
I think it's going to be a fascinating year. I'm very hopeful, and I think that we're going to have a rough 100 days, 120, because there is, and obviously I didn't necessarily think that this was an appropriate statement because I don't want anything to be misconstrued, but at least in some, when you think about education, when you think about health, when you think about immigration, when you think about a lot of, there has been a lot of disruption in government, and in terms of policy pronouncements that have altered the way that we deliver services, that have altered the way that we communicate and engage with each other and with customers. In some organizations, even the term customer was a prohibited fruit. And so it's going to take a while. But the one thing that gives me hope is that there are a lot of people that have been in government that are coming back to government. Alejandro Mayorkas used to be the director of USCIS, and then he was the deputy secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and now he chances are will be the secretary. So you have the continuity of knowledge coming in. You don't have brand new people that have never been in government. Almost everyone that I have seen has had a significant amount of experience at the state level, at the local level, but also at the state level and at the national level and at the federal government level. So I'm very confident that this is not going to be as painful. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity. This was so much fun. I can talk to you guys until 9 if you want to, because I'm a little nervous about, what am I going to do for 7 hours if, I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah, that's right. We'll see if that comes true.
Well, it's 5 o'clock. At 5 o'clock, we'll do some margaritas and wait for 9 o'clock. So that when the what?
It'd be like watching the ball drop on New Year's Eve, the countdown.
Yeah, but if you start margaritas at 5, by the time the ball drops at 9, you don't even care. You're like, ha ha ha, I didn't win. Ha ha. It's the next morning when you have a headache. It's like, oh my God, I didn't win and I have a headache. But anyway, thank you very, very much. Thank you. Hope we can connect again soon. Take care, guys.
Mariela.